Welcome everyone to the Wednesday, April 24th, 2019 school committee meeting. Let us rise to pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us have a moment of silence for our fallen soldiers and troops serving overseas. All right, second item on the agenda is public participation. First name on the list is Mr. Mali. Mr. Mali, please state your name and address for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Humayun Mali, 53 Chester Street. Good evening, honorable members. School committee members are the most important connection between the citizen-parent interaction. It is very important our community interact and community knows and understand the needs of our citizens. Have more school committee meetings so these great elected officials from our city can bring the message from heart and soul of our community. Since the arrival of Honorable Superintendent Cynthia Paris, she has been #1 champion in improving community and parent participation. Having more school committee meetings help us to understand more about our parent and community needs by our great school committee members. Our public school now, with impeccable leadership of Honorable Superintendent Cynthia Paris, moving forward. 100 days just listening to community, to our school staff, has positive impact in parent and community involvement. We, the citizen, feel strongly Honorable Superintendent Cynthia Paris' arrival in our city has helping to break the barrier, cultural barrier, language barrier, therefore make education such a positive experience by bringing our community and a school closer. As the great educational reformer Horace Mann said, education indeed has become the most important equalizer in a society by breaking all the barriers, cultural and language barrier. As we say goodbye to the great Lawrence Teachers Union, Honorable Frank McLaughlin, who fought hard for our teachers and their union, our message to our great Lawrence Teachers Union is this: please remember, we always support you. Million thanks to Chris Meniel Lawrence Public School Facility Management for his great job. In this election year, please support our best custodial employees. They need raise and best union. Thank you.
Next is myself on public participation. Good evening, everyone. I am Maria Nella Rivera, and I reside at 2A Washington Street. I present this information on behalf of many of our constituents. I interviewed and had conversations with hundreds of members from our community, from the wealthiest to those struggling in poverty, in order to widen my perspective on the issues occurring under this receivership. The following concerns were shared. There's a vast concern regarding teacher retention rate. There's a concern about bribery and nepotism within Lawrence Public Schools. There are concerns in terms of the credentials of teachers and administrators managing the education of our children. Bullying that is not being addressed appropriately continues to be a concern. Harsh disciplining and leading our children down the school-to-prison pipeline, school lunches, continues to be a problem. In order to remediate some of these issues, these items need to start appearing on the school committee's agenda. The turnaround plan recommendation specifically states, and I quote, advocate for the school committee to use evidence or data in commenting on policy issues and student achievement issues, but the committee is never given the opportunity to engage in policy-making discussions, hence leading the school committee down a path of learned helplessness. The lack of joint meetings between both the LAE and the school committee is undermining our democracy. What is happening here in Lawrence is not the gold standard of education reform and should not be replicated in any other school systems. Our voices are being silenced, but word is spreading across the city, across the state, and across the country. Thank you. Next up is Elizabeth Lavasta.
Hello and good evening, Honorable Mayor Dan Rivera and Superintendent Paris and school committee members. My name is Elizabeth Lavasta, MED. First, I would like to say how grateful I am that there is still a Democratic committee in the city that allows me as a parent of 3 Lawrence Public School students to come and voice my opinion. I would also like to thank the mayor of Lawrence for being such a great example to my children as being the second Latino mayor in the city of Lawrence. I would like to thank him for ultimately providing my children with an example that as a first-generation Latino American, you can hold leadership positions, that people who look like you can be leaders. See, this is important to me as a parent, an educator, and community advocate because oftentimes when I speak to children in the community, they have a hard time thinking about their futures, what kind of professionals they can be. They're in a state of learned helplessness. Mr. Mayor and Superintendent Paris, my education is my privilege, and as such, I have used this privilege over the years to help the residents of my beloved city become civically engaged in their respective neighborhoods. I have logged countless of hours to convince residents in the city how great of a place it is, amidst all the bad publicity. I have had to convince some of my former co-workers of the beauty there is in Lawrence. For this reason, I ask for you and the members of this wonderful school committee to fight for the rights of our children. Some of the ways in which we can fight for our students' rights is by monitoring our spending. A good example of this is the ANET test, which is administered 4 times within a year. Multiplied by the numbers of schools in the city seems like a good place to start in our budget. Our children need money invested in their education, not money invested in an ANET testing, which is a tool used as a measure to monitor teachers' ability to teach, but is sometimes used as a grading tool as well. Saving on these tests can provide room for budgets for all of us to hire well-educated teachers with appropriate certifications so that we may start to retain more of those teachers. Another area in which we can invest these dollars can be to provide more trauma and cultural competency training for the teachers.
Thank you, Ms. Lavasta.
Thank you.
Next participant is Catherine Montero.
Right? So there's no Hispanic people here. I was going to do this in Spanish. Okay, hi, my name is Catherine Montero. Good evening, everyone. 7071 North Parish Road, Lawrence, Massachusetts. That is Lawrence High School. I'm just going to briefly say this. He traducido este testimonio al español en este documento a favor de contestar las preguntas de la encuesta y decirnos si están de acuerdo. Please let us know your opinion via this survey. I have a little survey for everybody. This is actually exciting news. So I am a former teacher within the Lawrence Public School System, and I am currently the CEO of Global Deeds, an organization that works in tandem with corporations and in support of public high schools, their teachers and students. I always focus on solutions. Therefore, the following is a step towards the solution to the problem of lack of funding within the LPS system. The following was discussed with a group of students, and I've been asked to present it during this meeting. Number 1, start a high school competition called School Sustainability Project, where students investigate and analyze ways for all the schools to save money. They can also think of ways of making money in support of the schools and themselves. Global Deeds, our organization, has developed and legally registered a method that does exactly that. Number 2, the winning group of students providing the best school sustainability proposal will be in charge of managing over $1 million of the school budget through a participatory budgeting process, PBP, under the guidance of trained teachers, parents, and I should say these teachers know accounting, economics, and school administration. Please note that access to audited financial reports dating back to fiscal year 2011 under the receivership will be required in this process as a way of understanding how the funds should be allocated. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Good evening and buenas noches. Members of the school committee and fellow members of the community, I would like to address two important issues that I find to be rather infuriating. First, I am appalled that the school committee only meets quarterly. We are supposed to be invested in our children's future, and that means working together and move often than 4 times a year. It has come to my attention that there was a motion put before the school committee for the committee to meet on a more regular basis, and the idea was voted down. I believe that this is imperative that the committee meet at least once a week in order to strategize on ways to end the receivership and better serve our community. Also, I believe that we have to search for successful ways for funding important school programs that have been cut, such as special education, a cut that truly infuriates me. This affects me on a personal level. As you may know, I work for a nonprofit organization, Asperger, and that tries to help people on the autism spectrum with employment issues. We know on a daily basis issues faced by these people due to lack of appropriate and educational opportunities in the past. Students with disabilities struggle and endure many challenges as it is. And now, because of these cuts, they may not be receiving the services they are entitled to in order to succeed in life. We must find funding for special education. Students with disabilities deserve the same chances, the same educational opportunities, and those of students without disability. To meet these challenges presented by the cuts in funding and strategies about ways to end receivership, we must have a community involvement for policymakers, strategic planners, students, teachers, and former students and teachers. We should set up a committee to meet on regular basis to help with our mission in finding a way to get rid of the receivership and another to find necessary funding for the needed school programs. I'm willing to take the initiative to help coordinate either one of these committees. Remember, it takes a village to raise a child. Let's end the receivership once and for all. It's time to take back our schools.
Thank you. And that concludes our public participation. Next on the agenda is the proposed FY20 budget presentation.
Thank you. So tonight I'd like to share with you all our proposed budget. But first I wanted to share a bit of our process. The process in developing this proposed budget was quite complex and it involved a few things. First, we had to manage and forecast the FY20 budget. Next, we collaborated with central office leaders and principals, making sure that the budget reflects school-based needs. Next, we also made sure that the focus was on district-wide priorities as outlined by budget guidelines. And lastly, we had lots of communications and meetings with the district, between the district and the Lawrence Alliance for Education Board. As part of the budget review process, we met with each individual school and their teams. We also met with school department heads. That process entails sharing with the school team everything from staffing, expenditures, academic and enrichment services. It also reviews the school calendar, the operational plans, and goals and strategies. As an example, we asked schools to share with us their current staffing model. We asked them if they are expecting changes in the form of FTEs. We asked them if they're expecting changes in the form of additional or reduction in staff. With respect to the academic and enrichment services, we asked them about the opportunities that our students are receiving before, after school, during school. We asked about their ability to support with intervention and enrichments and enhancements. With respect to the school calendar, we asked very specific questions about professional development opportunities for our teachers. We asked about half days. We asked when the school day starts and when it ends. So all of these conversations are supported by the teacher leadership teams with the support of our union leadership. and endorsed, and so school teams come to the table ready to discuss and have conversations, and then we guide them as a central office team. So after all these conversations with the department heads and schools, we design the budget based on those priorities and the needs of the schools. I wanted to share some of our funding sources. So Lawrence receives a budget every year from two specific funding sources. The first one is by the city. And so the mayor, and it's approved by the city council, and then the budget is referred as our local budget appropriation. And then we have state and federal grants. Lawrence receives grants through formula-based, based on our population, and it's on a competitive base, and most of these are through the Department of Education and Secondary Education. So the grant periods vary, and they're not quite aligned to the fiscal year, but we expect some of them to be reoccurring, and then some, because of competitive, we don't fully know when we get them, and so we account for them, but they're part of the larger picture of the budget. Our state aid is determined in 3 steps. This is what we call Chapter 70 state formula, and it's defined by the community's foundation budget. What that means is that adequate funding level for each district is based on specific grades. It's based on the programs, and then demographic characteristics of our students, including SES, including race. It also determines equitable local contribution, or how much of that belongs to the foundation budget, which means that that's the amount that the city is expected to contribute, and it's calculated based on the town's property tax and relative wealth of the community. And the remainder is funded by Chapter 70. So again, it's a local contribution, plus the state aid is our net school spending requirement. And this is the minimum amount requirement that the district must comply with in state law. In this graph, we note what the net school spending requirement is and that contribution over the years. So the city receives $197 million in Chapter 70 aid in the fiscal year 2020, which makes up over 94% of our budget, which means the contribution expected from the city is over $10 million for fiscal year 2020. So here's a breakdown of how we fund our schools. As a reminder, schools have budget autonomy, which means that they have the ability to create staffing and move funds from one account to another one, as long as it's within their allocation. It's why our schools have very different staffing models and non-salary budgets. The staffing we provide for school is to cover the cost of the salary, including contractual obligations, career ladder, and salary schedules. And then there's non-salary budgets, which provide level funding for the non-salary account budgets from the budget the previous year to the following year. The actual number requested for this year is, it's $195 million. And what that budget request is funding is all current existing programs, including enrichment, intramurals, athletic, everything that is currently existing. It's level funding for instructional and operational materials. And then, of course, that includes all increases for health, dental, and employee benefits and special education tuitions. It also has a request of 1.8 over, which brings that complete total to 195, and that is to fulfill budget priorities, which included student achievement, student services, and educational infrastructure. The additional appropriation of $3.4 million is to fund 46.5 additional FTEs to support those budget priorities. And this is what it looks like. For student achievement, we are requesting 23.5 new FTEs. There's the breakdown of those to include the bulk of them for ESL teachers. As you all know, we have a majority of student population that requires additional support acquiring English. And then there's the rest of the support services. For student services, the majority of our requests belong to the special education staff to continue to support our students with special learning needs. And finally, for educational infrastructure, which constitutes safety and overall care of our buildings, includes 0.5 custodian, a clerk, 3 safety officers, a computer technician, and 1 human resource generalist. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions, comments? Any questions on the budget?
So my question is this for everything in the school system, or is it just per school?
Yeah, so the question is the outline of the priorities and the additional FTEs for the entire district. It is a combination of school-based in addition to centrally deployed. So an example of centrally deployed on the additional list is mostly under student services. And you'll see that we have like 1 board-certified behavior analyst. That's a centrally deployed FTE, and then we allocated based on needs to the schools. Another example of that is the, actually that's the one example. The other ones are school-based.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Well, if there's no other questions, I just have some comments to make in regards to the budget. First of all, I appreciate your time because I know this is very time-consuming to review all these numbers and to formulate a budget to present to our community. So I appreciate that. I guess my comment is in regards to not being able to view the budget until today. I think I saw the budget this morning very briefly and reviewed the budget, but I think this meeting just kind of highlights just how disenfranchising the receivership is to our community, because we don't, as elected leaders of the community, we don't have a hands on the budget. There's a comment on the website that states that there are financial reports that are sent to DESE each month by the school committee. And I think at this point it should be updated to reflect either the LAE or the superintendent, because the reality is the school committee doesn't have any sort of say or power or manages that aspect of the financial reports. But I think going forward as a school committee, it's very important for us to take more of an active role in what happens to the budget. These are the taxes that we all pay, whether you pay local, your state taxes, or your federal taxes. This is all coming back to us. This is our children's education. This is their future. So I would like to see us take a more active role going forward when it comes to the budget, because there is a learned helplessness happening of the school committee, and it's impairing our ability to govern the school system in the future. If the intention is to transition back to local control, I don't think a presentation to this extent is sufficient. But this is where we're at. We're under receivership. So if no one has any other questions or comments, motion to adjourn the meeting. Sure.
I'm not quite sure if everyone paid close attention to what I said. This is actually the voice of the kids. I'm here because they told me to be here for them. But this whole participatory budgeting process it's something that they're excited about. I don't know if you spoke with some of those students as well, but I just wanted to know what your view is in terms of implementing such thing. I know that it has been done in Boston, and they probably saw that. In Cambridge, they do it at the city level. So, I mean, I feel that it promotes transparency and accountability, and at this point, I feel that I support it 100%. I'm in the nonprofit. I've been in the nonprofit sector for like 15 years. So, I mean, accountability is a big thing for anyone managing a nonprofit, but especially a school district. So one of my concerns personally is that a lot of the parents, I used to teach at INT as well, do not speak English. So, I mean, to get them involved in something like this, I understand there's a learning curve, but I do feel that it is important. I just want to know, how do you feel about the possibility of implementing a participatory budgeting process here within the Lawrence Public School system? Thank you.
So I'm not too knowledgeable on what participatory budgeting is. That being said, I appreciate you bringing the information forth in front of the school committee. I would like to raise a motion that we add participatory budgeting to the next school committee meeting agenda.
Second.
Discussion? I mean, I'm curious to find out more about what participatory budgeting is. I heard that Cambridge participates in it. From my understanding of it is that there's a portion of the budget that is directly allocated towards the community having a voice and say directly into how much funds, how to spend that funding, those funds that are being allocated. But I would like to look more into the research. So for those who are in favor of adding participatory budgeting to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There you have it. We have 3. I didn't hear.
Is that in the form of a motion that was seconded?
It was seconded by,
I seconded.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I seconded.
it was seconded by Ms. Seward. Yeah. All right. Well, that is motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And that is the meeting.